So, the top story. Well, these days, most of the decisions of people are influenced by social media. Something similar has happened with Gautam Gambhir, with just having been a mentor for two IPL teams and no coaching experience per se. Gautam, remember, was earlier this year appointed as the head coach of the Indian national cricket team. Now, the former cricketer is facing the heat after losing the Test series against New Zealand. The BCCI held an intense 6 hour long meeting with the selection committee chief Ajit Agarkar and India's ODI and Test skipper Rohit Sharma, along with Gautam Gambhir. So, what has been decided effectively is that the Border Gavaskar Trophy will decide whether Gautam Gambhir stays on in his role or not. If India performs well, which means essentially if India wins the trophy, then Gautam Gambhir stays on. If it does not and has a performance similar to what happened to New Zealand at home, then the BCCI is looking at having a two-coach model. That would mean that Gautam Gambhir continues in the limited over format of the game as coach for T20s and ODIs. Someone say, and the name being specifically mooted is that of VVS Lakshman, then takes over as the coach for the Test team. That's a very interesting debate that's come out here. Firstly, to begin with, also, is it fair to just blame Gautam Gambhir for what has been a pretty shambolic performance all through the team at this point? Let me bring in my guest joining me at this point, Rajinder Amarnath, former cricketer, Chandrasekhar Luthra, senior sports journalist, and Vedam Jaishankar, sports journalist. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining me on the show tonight. Let me begin with you, Mr. Amarnath. The first question that comes to my mind is that is it a bit too early and perhaps a bit premature to put only Gautam Gambhir under the bus, given the fact that we saw a all-round poor performance by most of the key players in during the New Zealand Test series?
Well, I think the job of a coach is probably the most difficult assignment for any cricketer. As a player, you can do what you're good in doing. But as a coach, it's at times very difficult for you to make players do what you really want them to do. We have seen in the series against New Zealand what the performance came up with. A team which gets out and 40 runs also scored 400 runs in the second innings. Clearly, there has been some sort of a communication gap in understanding the nature of the wicket. And also, when you have world-class fast bowlers, I fail to understand why you have to prepare a Turner's track on which your own batsmen have struggled. We should have gone with the strength, but it seems that we took the Kiwis quite lightly before they landed in India. And that is what really paid us into getting into the deep hole. Getting back to Gautam Gambhir, the situation which he is in now, it's going to be do or die for him in Australia. It becomes very difficult for the coach because he's not going to be walking onto the ground and playing for India. He can only select the best possible combination for a test match and hope they deliver. But at the moment, I'm not too sure what sort of understanding he has with the team management who will be selecting the team on the Australian tour, how they're going to be reading the pitches in Australia, and how they're going to come up with the game plan against the Aussies, because Aussies in Australia are very difficult to beat. We have seen in the past, no matter if you put some new faces also, they're equally good to come up with good performance. So it's going to be a testing time for Gautam Gambhir in Australia.
So, but again, let me bring in Chandrasekhar Luthra at this point. Is it too, are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater? The fact still remains that if I've got my calculations correct, Gautam Gambhir has been head coach for about 4 months to 5 months at max. And by the end of the Border Gavaskar Trophy, he'll be coach for 6 months. Now, is this not a very risky move to hire and fire people in 6 months? Because we all know that Rahul Dravid ended his tenure on a high, winning the T20 World Cup, but there were immensely frustrating periods even under Rahul Dravid's tenure in which many people felt that the Indian cricket team was underperforming here. So are we being a bit too hasty to try and already talk about sacking the coach or at least relieving part of his responsibilities after one bad series?
I can only laugh at what you have asked me. This is not a case of putting or throwing the baby out of this. They are all dads of Indian cricket. Don't you know that how Gautam Gambhir got into the Team India dressing room? Don't you know that Gautam Gambhir had absolutely no credentials to become a coach? He was mentor or whatever, but batsmen they are failing. Whom they are going to seek help from? Gautam Gambhir? No, absolutely not. Knowing Gautam for since his early childhood days, I can only vouch that Gautam Gambhir had no technical depth or any technical knowledge to correct anybody else. Gautam Gambhir was a gritty player, great player with great backing, and now as a coach, he got there because of the BJP backing. You have to understand that he got his job just because he was losing his parliament seat. So in order to, not, kind of, that he should not be feeling bad about it, he was given this job. Mr. Jai Shah, Mr. Gautam Gambhir, they are all, ek hi thali ke chatte batte. So you can't say that throwing the baby out of the thing. The fact is that in last 2, 3, 4 years, we got out for 36 in Australia. Nothing happened to the captain. Virat Kohli was there. And obviously, after that, we won the series in his absence. Now we are getting out for 46. And obviously, nothing is happening to the captain. Now we are trying to eyewash people by saying that Gautam Gambhir could be, succeeded after maybe one more series. Nothing will happen. Come on. I don't believe in all these theories. The cricket
No,
has
but Mr.
changed.
Luthra,
The
you've
cricket has
that
taken.
I think you're countering your own argument, Mr. Luthra. Mr.
No,
Luthra,
no,
you're countering your own
I'm not
argument. When
countering.
there were
I'm
no
saying
wholesale
nothing
trades.
will
No, no, one second.
happen.
Let me.
Nothing will happen.
No, No, Mr. Luthra, my point is should anything happen in the first place? And look at your own two arguments which you've put. Number one, if no sweeping changes were brought in the team after India was all out for 36 against Australia in the first test few years ago, then by that logic, why should sweeping changes be brought in then? Because the fact still remains we recovered to win the series with a second string team then. Even
Without
with the other
without
setbacks you
without
mentioned
without
here, India
Kohli
has
that
gone
time.
on to win later on this thing. The second
Without
no,
Kohli that time.
so that's
Nothing
my
happened
point.
to
So when
Kohli.
Mr. Virat Kohli was not sacked then, why should an example be made out of Gautam Gambhir when the team has underperformed?
Now,
Because if there has been no accountability given for all these years, why should Gautam Gambhir be the first person? The second thing which I mentioned said if you say that Mr. Gambhir was appointed without the required credentials for reasons along in cricket, then shouldn't questions be asked to the people who appointed Mr. Gambhir? Like, I'll give a simple example.
absolutely,
Today, if I hire
absolutely.
someone for my team who is not capable, someone who quits in a few days, the HR or the management puts me up to task as to on what basis was this hiring done. So then should we be blaming Gautam Gambhir or should we be blaming the BCCI?
Look, you have to blame. Finally, that's what I'm saying. Finally, you have to blame the BCCI who got Gautam Gambhir at at the first point. Point is that there is a management up there in
Okay.
the BCCI who are basically जो कहते हैं ना finding people of their own choice in order to get a complete hold onto the Indian cricket. That's what is happening. There was no other people of seniority of the people who had some credentials about the coach, and so Gautam Gambhir got all this job because of one person. That is his credentials as a member of parliament in BJP. He failed here, or maybe he was to be replaced, so he got this another job. So point is, who is to be blamed? I would say Jai
Okay, let me
Shah,
bring in.
not Gautam Gambhir. And now by putting this thing that Ajit Agarkar has had
Okay.
a meeting with Gautam Gambhir or Rohit Sharma, I'm saying Ajit Agarkar has no, I would say, authority to remove or anything these people. Ajit Agarkar is little, I would say, a little fish in the entire sea. Gautam Gambhir is much bigger, fish in the sea. So I would not take this thing.
Okay, let
This
me
is
get in
just a
Vedam
eyewash.
Jaishankar.
This is just something to
Okay.
to tell people
Okay.
that we are serious about some cricket, but absolutely not. I'm not going to take this argument, not at all.
Okay, let me bring in Vedam Jaishankar if he agrees with this point. Vedam, one can also argue that were we being a bit bit too premature, or are we, as usual, which has often been one of the problems in cricketing fandom, is that we are being a bit overreactionary to one series loss? Because at the end of the day, the numbers are historic here, not in a good way. For the first time, we have lost a bilateral ODI series against Sri Lanka, of all countries, in 27 years. We have lost a test series against New Zealand for the first time in 36 years. We have lost a test series at home for the first time in 12 years. These are not good records to have. And that ultimately, this is the dubious honor that Mr. Gambhir carries.
Yeah, firstly, the role of a cricket coach is not well defined. He is not a supremo like in football. If in football there's a bad player, he can pull him out and substitute him with somebody else, or if he's not following his instructions. Having said that, yes, a coach does not go out and bat or bowl or field. It's the players who ought to do that. But what is it that we are really against? You know, the basic fundamental difficulties of this team is that their decisions have been awful. Right from the first test against New Zealand, when, like Rajendra Amarnath said, you had a world-class bowling attack, bowl first. You know which pitch is going to suit the fast bowlers, bowl first. You didn't do that. Now, you have, okay, you opted for spinners, spinning track. Fair enough. So the next two tests you played with spinning track. Fair enough. People make mistakes, people take decisions, etc., etc. But what doesn't gel? If you wanted spinning tracks, why have you got two fast bowlers there? And the second fast bowler didn't bowl at all, which means your thinking was all muddled. You could have either played an extra batsman, which would have been the right thing to do. You could have played an extra batsman, made him bowl maybe 1 or 2 overs of slow medium pace or something like that.
So is this
but you have not done
entirely,
that.
are
So
you saying, Vedam, that all of this is
difference-
entirely Gautam Gambhir's decisions, or is it a collaborative of the management of Rohit Sharma and of Gautam Gambhir? Who generally takes these calls?
It should be for both, because the captain is the one who takes the decision. He's the one who takes, when he wins the toss, he decides. But I'm sure a lot of discussions would have taken place behind the scenes or much before what they ought to do. And how can you make a mistake with the playing 11? It's not just the captain. The playing 11 is a responsibility also of the coach. And that is the mistake which I don't understand at all.
Okay.
And let's go a little step back and look at the process. Now, you talked earlier about Rahul Dravid. Rahul Dravid came up the ranks. He was with the under-19 team. He was with the India A team. And then he moved on to the senior team. So you had a process there. He was used to coaching. He knew the players inside out. I'm talking many of the young players who came on. Rahul Dravid had handled them at under-19 and India A levels. Now, that's not the case with Gautam Gambhir. It's a totally different kettle of fish. But I still won't blame him, because, the coach is not the one who will go out there and play. It's the players. And let's face it, this is an aging side. They might have one swan song left in them, a couple of these players. But the rest of them don't have that experience as yet. Some of them are very good cricketers, but they're not right up there. And did you panic against New Zealand?
Okay.
10 out of 10 times, I think this team, whether batting, bowling, fielding, or even captaincy, or even as a coach, panicked horribly against New Zealand. That first innings itself in Bangalore, when they were 46 all out, that would just bundle them up. The fight was knocked out of them. And trying to fight, they got more tense. And the more tense they got more desperate. And the more desperate they got, they made more mistakes. And finally, it was,
So two important points coming in from...
Yeah, go ahead.
Vedam, you have made 2 points in argument. Let me put both of them to Rajendra Amarnath. Mr. Amarnath, let's look at the first point which both Mr. Luthra and Vedam have pointed out. Is the problem to begin with the fact that perhaps Gautam Gambhir's professional credentials, I'm not looking into his background beyond the cricketing pitch, the fact still remains that professionally Gautam Gambhir's coaching or mentorship experience has been limited to essentially coaching or leading to IPL teams. Did BCCI or did the selection committee perhaps get a bit swept away with the success Gautam Gambhir had with Kolkata Knight Riders in the IPL and decided, okay, if he's good enough for KKR, that means he's good enough for Team India?
Well, let me make one thing very clear, that the job of a coach is not practically teaching them how to play forward or back. Every cricketer worth his salt, when he reaches the level of test or playing the ODI for the country. He's good enough to know what is expected of him. The only time he comes under the scrutiny is when he's struggling. If he's a batting coach or a bowling coach, whoever is there, he tries to rectify his mistakes. But here, the problem which has arisen is that you got off from the bed from the wrong side. Gautam Gambhir, no doubt, does not have the credentials of rising from the ranks to become a coach. But what is the role of a coach? The role of the coach is just to guide the team and also, at the time of crisis, take over a sort of a off-the-field captaincy. You change the batting order, you bring in a new person. He did that, but it didn't work out when he brought in the tailender as a night watchman. This is the thing which has been done in the past because last 15 or 20 minutes are very critical for a team batting at that stage to lose a regular batsman. You try and shield a batsman. Unfortunately, it did not work. So I would personally feel that I think we are jumping the gun. It's too early in the innings for Gautam Gambhir to be put under the scanner, which he has been put now. Maybe the things would change in Australia because he's been a fighter as a batsman, no doubt about it. But coming back to your KKR, that he played a role of a mentor and did very well there. But let's not forget, 20 overs and game is so different than 50 overs or a test match. Test match is the ultimate test for any cricketer. Here, I think the captain, the team management also needs to come under the scanner because I don't think so. It's only the Gautam Gambhir which must have told the captain that we have to bat no matter.
Then let's talk about the captain, Rajinder Amarnath. Let's talk about the captain. Let's talk about Virat Kohli, the dynamic duo of Indian batting. The fact remains that their form, both as batsmen and also as Rohit Sharma's captaincy decisions, they have all been under the scanner. Particularly the batting form has been miserable in tests for the past several months now, especially in the case of, say, someone like Virat Kohli. Now, the problem with Indian cricket has always been that we are very star crazy. We treat our cricketers like they're Bollywood stars, and we have cults which go on about, which then became clan wars, and that's something we've seen in Indian cricket of late, particularly around Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Is the problem that perhaps Gautam Gambhir or whoever is the Indian think tank does not have the courage or does not feel confident enough to take tough decisions to ask for perhaps the captain to be removed or for someone like Virat Kohli to be rested if they're not performing?
Well, if I take you back into history, there was a time when the Indian batsmen saw a little dampness in the pitch or a little green pitch. The Indian batsman would whisper and tell the captain to field first. But here they took a wise decision, what they thought was a wise decision in the first test match. Normally, if there is a moisture, and if they read the wicket the way they read it, that in the fourth innings, it may not have that kind of a bounce. It will be difficult for the batsmen if they were to put up a good total. But pre-lunch session really spoiled the game plan of the Indian team. I think if we had decided to bat on, then the top order should have ensured that they batted right through the first session without losing too many wickets. And then when the wicket became better in the second session, they could have gone for runs, but it didn't happen. And I can also understand the people talking about Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma not being amongst the runs. Yes, they are struggling, and we have to look for a replacement as quickly as possible. This has happened with a lot of test cricketers in the past also, who have done exceedingly well in their career, but later on they have been struggling. Why only batsmen, even bowlers? If you talk about Srinath, the poor guy had to sit for almost 30 odd test matches because Kapil Dev was nearing the world record. So it's been happening in the past, but I hope better sense prevail. And quickly the things were sorted out in Australian soil, because in Australia, you need experienced
Then let me quickly bring in Mr. Luthra and Vedam and Mr. Jaishankar as well for this. Very quickly, Chandrasekhar Luthra, you have been very outspoken about where you feel the criticism should lie with the BCCI. But what about the senior players? Isn't it mind-boggling that Virat Kohli's last domestic tournament presence came before Sachin Tendulkar's last domestic performance. They were given an option, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, to play for the Duleep Trophy. They did not here. Is it not a fundamental discipline problem that perhaps international cricketers in the Indian team believe that they are above proving their mettle on the domestic stage?
Absolutely. I agree with you. And to do so, to make them the bigger than or the demigods, it's a problem with the BCCI. They have made them the demigods. They have not put pressure like Dilip
Okay.
Vengsarkar. I remember that time, 2005-6 kind of time when Dilip Vengsarkar was the chief coach. And I remember anybody was failing in the batting thing or anywhere else in the bowling department. He used to tell them to go and play at least 2-3 Ranji Trophy matches or the domestic matches. And after the injury also, they used to play and then get selected. So point is, who is going to put pressure on that? And second thing, when the chips are down, obviously the players look up to the coach and the captain to motivate them. Gautam Gambhir has a basic problem that he's a
Okay, we seem to be losing that connection with Mr. Luthra. We've got the point. Very quickly, Vedam Jaishankar, I just have 60 seconds. Vedam Jaishankar, then the question is, are we then looking at perhaps a two-coach system? I don't remember whether that's ever happened in Indian system, but is that the best way? If Gautam Gambhir's skill set is more with the limited overs format, let him concentrate on that and build a team for that, and have someone like VVS Lakshman, who's a test specialist, look after the test team. Is that the best way forward?
Yeah, so what happens to NCA? Are you wanting to abandon the NCA? You don't have a backup there. No, I don't think that is the right way at all. If you put a man as a coach, give him all your confidence, let him go ahead with it. But look, let's talk about the elephant in the room. What was Rohit Sharma doing? He's your captain. He's been a failure as a batsman. He was a walking wicket. Even in that last innings, he could have allowed somebody else to open the batting and he could have come lower down the order. He didn't do that. And at least Virat Kohli, I have one excuse for him. In all the 10 years that I've seen Virat Kohli batting, he has never been a comfortable starter. He's always been a nervous starter. He takes 15-20 minutes to get going. And he's unfortunate, except for that one innings that he played in Bangalore. He was out before those 15-20 minutes. And another time he got run out very stupidly. Again, that was pressure. That's all I could say. That was a lot of pressure. But what was Rohit doing? He was not even thinking right. He was not pulling off the right strokes. And if you think you could bat first and right through it, then you have to have confidence in your batting. You are not the batsman you were, let's say, 2 years or 3 years ago. None of your seniors are the batsmen they were. Your juniors are still finding their feet. So what was that decision that you took to bat first on a damp wicket? And that is what I'm talking about again and again and again. You have made silly mistakes. Your decision making have been atrocious. More than your batting or bowling. It's a decision making with the choice of playing 11.
And so the sense I get from this discussion, coming from both Mr. Amarnath, Mr. Luthra and Mr. Jaishankar, is that there are systemic problems here in terms of the selection, whether in strategy, team management, and from the appointment of key people himself. And just sacking Mr. Gambhir if the team does not perform well, he might be deserved, might not be deserved, might be a bit premature, but it certainly is not the be-all and end-all of the Indian cricket team's problems. Hopefully, we see a resurgence in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, but if not, then a lot more tougher decisions will have to be taken than just remove a coach who has been there for the last 4 months. With that, thank you, gentlemen.